I think that's the best for what we're doing right now. Not yet. Let's see. I don't think we are. Okay, we are.
All right. Everybody else needs to add it up.
No, not yet.
Okay. Howdy, folks. Well, I hope you can hear me. If you're here, you're interested in learning the latest and greatest on what's going on in the feral hog world. This is Nick Dornack, and I am the Director of Watershed Services for the Meadows Center for the Water and the Environment at Texas State University. And I'm really excited to have Josh Helcel with us today from Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute. Josh has been traveling all over Texas for a number of years, giving talks, helping people out with his technical expertise, and sharing with them the latest on rules of transportation, management measures, etc. So we've asked Josh to come on today and share that with the folks here in the webinar. This is our first attempt at this, so I'm just kind of this. I've got the training wheels on for today, and we have 2 more webinars coming up this week. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we will be having the folks from Veracity Aviation, and they've been contracting with us over the last couple of years to provide some aerial control in Caldwell and Hays County. And hopefully they'll share with you some of their experiences and hopefully some great videos of those aerial control missions that they've been on. And then on Friday, we have Bubba Ortiz with Ortiz Game Management, AKA the Hog Whisperer. So Bubba will share with you some of his experiences and hopefully some great stories. The Central Texas Feral Hog Task Force has been engaged with several counties over the last several years. We started out in Caldwell and Hays. Last year, we began engaging and got a grant with Guadalupe County as well. But we've continued with bounty work. Over the last couple of weeks, we've distributed, I think, around 10 new hog traps in Caldwell County, and we have 8 to give away in Hays County. So we're just wrapping up the contract on that, and looking for some continued funding to provide these services to landowners that are so desperately needed. As you guys know, feral hogs are relentless, and if you let up, they will definitely take over. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Josh and let y'all hear from him. And feel free to join in with the chat function, and we can. I want to keep this pretty informal, so we can ask questions to Josh or to anybody else on the webinar. So let's see here, Valerie. How do I get this switched over there? Okay, Josh, I think you're on, buddy.
All right, good deal. Can you hear me, Nick? Can everybody hear me out there?
I can hear you, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, howdy, guys. I hope everybody is doing pretty good this afternoon. My name is Josh Helcel. I'm an extension associate with Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute. Been working with NRI for a number of years now. I've been working with Nick, too, for a number of years. Nick's done some just amazing, outstanding things as far as feral hog control with the bounty program and the task force and all that kind of stuff. And so he asked me to provide the latest and greatest feral hog updates. And So I can't tell you how latest it's going to be, and I really can't tell you how greatest it's going to be. But we do have some new things to share on the laws and regulations front. We do have some new things to talk about on the toxicant front. There's some relatively new resources that we have out there as well right now, and there is a really new and outstanding way that we are going to be implementing one of those resources. And so, that's kind of the plan for today. We're going to address those. Like Nick said, we'll keep it pretty informal. Put some questions in the chat box and all that kind of stuff if you have them. And with that, we'll just go ahead and get started here. And first off, I just pulled this. This is probably the latest and greatest thing going in Texas as far as laws and regulations go. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this as well. But what we have now, finally, after a lot of gray area and some confusion for a number of years, finally we have no hunting license required to hunt feral hogs on private property with landowner authorization and permission. This is kind of a big deal because for a long time, it was you did not need a license if you were a landowner or an agent of a landowner and you were harvesting depredating hogs. Well, there was a lot of gray area there, and that got eliminated. Okay. Essentially, we're talking about a lot of people don't understand that wild pigs are not wildlife. Okay, they're not a native species. They're actually classified in Texas as exotic livestock. And I'm not really sure if Parks and Wildlife was, really just wanting to ramp up hunting pressure on pigs, or if they finally just wanted to get their hands off of an exotic livestock species. But effective September 1 here, and this applies, and the big kicker here is that, of course, this applies to residents, but I had some interviews with some game wardens and some district game wardens specifically about the non-resident application. And so it does not matter if you are a resident or a non-resident hunter. Nobody starting September 1 needs a hunting license to harvest wild pigs and to shoot pigs. And I know there's a lot of ranchers, there's a lot of wildlife operations out there that are really excited about these out-of-state folks from New York and Pennsylvania and all that want to come down to Texas, excuse me, that no longer have to pay some of the highest non-resident hunting fees out there, especially just to shoot a pig. So this is pretty interesting. I think it's a good move by Parks and Wildlife, and it definitely eliminates the gray area as far as harvesting control with firearms. Now, a couple things about that. It kind of says it indirectly, but I did verify that you still do need a hunting license to harvest wild pigs on any Texas public land. So if you're in the public hunting program or you're hunting in the state park system or any Texas public land, you still do need that license even to shoot a pig. But any private land with landowner permission, resident, non-resident, you are good to go henceforth from September 1 to harvest all the pigs you want. All the other laws do apply though, for those that may be curious about it. Obviously, if you need hunter education, you need to have that. You can't trespass. You still can't shoot across roadways. Fire center for rifles within the city limits. All other basic statutes apply to that. But this is pretty exciting, and I know a lot of folks are pretty excited about no longer needing that hunting license just to go after hogs. But, I do want to point out, and I really don't want this to get lost in translation with the new initiative. These are our legal options for lethal control in the state of Texas. Okay, we have trapping, snaring, shooting, aerial gunning, and the use of trained dogs. We do not have a toxicant listed yet. Okay, so I want to point that out, and we'll talk. Only 2 of these lethal methods are proven to be capable of reducing populations. Now, those 2 are trapping and aerial gunning. And so what that means is that snaring, shooting, and the use of trained dogs are generally, and I say generally because there's always exceptions, generally not capable of reducing population. and hunting, whether you have a hunting license or not, is generally a tool pressure. Okay, it's generally a low harvest method that can be very effective for pressuring hogs and causing them to abandon areas where they are causing damage. This is really starting to catch on across the country. People are starting to really look at the research, and that's why states like Missouri, for example, have actually banned sport hunting on conservation lands because they know that generally it's not going to reduce populations. Heck, it's a lot of fun, but it's generally a tool of pressure, whether you need a license or not. But there are effective ways to utilize shooting. For example, the research indicates that you can reduce your agricultural damage by as much as half just by enacting strategic shooting or hunting. And even now that you don't need a license, right? And so you start shooting at pigs in the daytime, and what happens is that they'll generally start going nocturnal. And so in order to save your ag lands and to save your crops, you do need to be prepared to apply that pressure both day and night. So both nighttime and daytime strategic shooting pressure or hunting pressure can drive animals away. They can abandon areas where they're causing damage. It can be highly effective, and you can increase your success through suppressors, night vision, thermal, and all that kind of stuff. But that said, really great that nobody needs a license anymore to harvest pigs. This is something that needed to happen. But I do want to point out that what you see here is what happened there. Is a lot of fun, but generally, when it comes to effectively controlling pigs, it's about selecting the right tool at the right time for the job, right? And so we'll leave it at that. Why did it do that again? Okay, let's talk about toxicants. Okay. There have been some interesting developments with toxicants. You guys are probably familiar. We almost got a warfarin product a couple years ago, and then that kind of fizzled out. There was a lot of political pressure, a lot of backlash there from the public for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to get political or get into all of that, but sodium nitrite is still trucking along, and there's some things, some updates, latest and greatest that I can tell you about what's going on with sodium nitrite. We still don't have anything labeled for use in Texas right now. The last I heard, we're looking at summer of 2020. There's a few more trials and things that need to take place. A number of field trials have already successfully taken place. But also we need to understand that, when we do get sodium nitrite, and we will most likely get it here, this is going to be another tool in the toolbox, and there's really not going to be a silver bullet for wild pigs. Effective control is implementing a combined approach, using the right tool at the right time. But there's no doubt having a viable toxicant, and it does look like sodium nitrite is going to be highly viable. There's no doubt that that's going to put a hurt on some pigs and be very effective. And I know a lot of folks out there are really looking forward to that. What I'm really hoping as a biologist is that, people will understand the differences between warfarin, a product that's actually banned in Australia for lack of humaneness, and sodium nitrite. A product that has been widely researched for many, many years and has a very high efficacy and a low incidence of secondary transfer. And we'll talk about that too. Some of the changes, latest changes to sodium nitrite is in the delivery and in the type of bait, right? So originally they pelletized it, and it did it again. I know I didn't click that. All right. Originally they pelletized it. So you can see here, this was the original pellets, right? When we do get sodium nitrite, this is actually what it's going to look like. Okay. This is going to be a peanut butter flavored paste. In the original trials, there was some Milo and some seeds and things that they had put in there that it turned out that passerines and songbirds had a propensity to try to pick up off the ground. They've removed that Milo, they've removed those seeds, and there will be a second set of trials. But the bottom line here, guys, is that when we get sodium nitrite, nitrite, it's going to be a peanut butter paste. Now, kind of the deal with sodium nitrite is that as soon as it touches the air, it starts to decay. It has a very rapid half-life. And so some of the issues that they've run into is these wild pigs have a really great sense of smell, right? And so they can detect that decay in the sodium nitrite, and they've had issues with aversion. What they've come up with is a peanut butter flavoring and then also a microencapsulation that'll reduce the speed of that decay and increase the stability. So we're going to have that peanut butter paste. It's going to have the microencapsulation, no seeds or anything of any kind, and they're going to conduct trials on that too. And as I understand it, those trials will be the last trials that we need before we can have this product come to market. But things change, but that's just the last that I've heard, the latest and greatest. Parks and Wildlife has been conducting their own trials for a long time. I want to point to this Carrion feeder trial because a lot of folks are concerned about secondary transfer, right? You know, when these pigs get poisoned, the research indicates that they're showing symptoms within 30 minutes. In all of the trials that I'm aware of, there's an 80 to 90% efficacy, and none of the pigs made it more than 300 yards. But when they do expire, carrion feeders like vultures and also coyotes and stuff are going to be the first ones, right? So Parks and Wildlife conducted these trials where they exclusively fed vultures poisoned pigs. And I mean like the livers of recently deceased pigs. They were doing anything that they could to try to get toxicity in a carrion feeder. And the really, really cool thing about that, and this points to good science and good research, is that, you know, even when vultures were fed a diet of exclusively poisoned pigs and their livers and all that kind of stuff, the worst thing that happened, and this only occurred in turkey vultures, is their heads turned purple for a short amount of time, believe it or not. They maybe got a little bit sluggish, and then they'd turn around and their heads would go back to normal, and they were consuming immediately poisoned pigs again. And what this all points to is that they were unable to kill a carrion feeder through secondary transfer. There were 0 mortalities in that trial. This is promising. And there are more trials going to take place here. We'll talk about that. But we can at least point to that research and say, hey, look, we have a real potential for a viable product. Like I said, a lot of folks are pretty excited about that. This here is the most recent, latest, greatest thing that I've heard about sodium nitrite. I got this on the 1st of August, and I apologize for how many words and not being able to read that. I'll summarize for you. Essentially, the USDA has approved a second set of field trials to be conducted in 2 study sites in Alabama and Texas. I assume this is a response to the alteration of the bait, where they had to pull out the seeds and the milo and stuff, and they're just going to have to test that and make sure that that's good. And as I said previously, I believe this to be the last hoop to go through as far as trials. Everything else that has been pretty clear cut. So that just came in on the 1st. We have this last set of trials here in Alabama and in Texas, and you guys can get on this website too if you want, and read all about it as well. But this again is promising. I've been doing this as an extension associate for about 5 years now, and everybody says, oh man, we're going to get it next year. We're going to get it next year. But this is the first time that I can actually, get up in front of you guys and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what they've done. This is what the trials say. And for the first time, we have some real research and some real promise to actually possibly get this by summer of 2020, or maybe later than that. It just depends how people react politically to it. That's a big factor that we shouldn't overlook.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
I had a question, and then another participant had a question. My question was, do you know if the trials were conducted on domestic hogs or trapped wild pigs? And the other question was if other species like caracara birds were used in any of the trials. Do you have any information on either of those questions?
Yes. So the set of trials that I'm aware of were on trapped wild pigs that were, they weren't like domestic or anything. They were wild pigs that got trapped and moved into a holding facility for the purposes of testing. So these were in fact wild pigs. As far as Carrion goes, I got to see the reports of the mortality, this secondary transfer and stuff in the first trials, and I am not aware of any caracaras that accessed or were impacted by the bait. My assumption is that it would be very similar to a vulture. So this is actually pretty interesting. Sometimes people ask, well, why didn't it kill any of the vultures in the vulture trials and the pen trials? And what it has to do with is the way that these carrion feeders eat. Whether you're a turkey vulture or a black vulture or whatever, apparently they eat very slowly. They'll go and they'll take a bite or two, and then they'll back off, and then another one will come in, and another one will come in, and they really take a long time to consume their meal. And I've been told that that's a huge contributor as to why secondary transfer was not a big issue, and why there were no mortalities. And we know that generally carrion feeders, including caracaras, do eat the same way, right? So they're not just going to just ravenously eat the whole thing. They're going to take a couple bites, they're going to fly off, then they're going to come back, and they're going to consume that carcass over the course of a number of days. Was there another question too that I missed?
Yeah, well, one just came in, and it's a really good one because certainly coyotes and dogs don't eat that way. So
Right.
What about effects on coyotes, dogs, other carnivores?
Now that I don't know. I can't point to any research. I don't know if they have done that kind of trial or done that research yet. I can get a hold of John Kinsey or Justin Foster over at the Current Ask. But right now, I think the main concerns were raccoons, songbirds, and then vultures. And I'm sorry not to have any better information, but I really just don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, I do think that's a good question, and one that will certainly be brought up again and again as this moves on. So I think we'll try to put out, maybe communicate information from Josh through our website and Facebook page too. But that's something that we should know. And
Sure.
and then Mike Bera is asking, will this new formula turn adipose tissue blue like the old? And I think the answer to that is no. That was specific to warfarin, right, Josh?
Right, and this points to something that I'm really concerned about in the general public is that I really hope that people can make the distinction between warfarin and what that product was and did, and sodium nitrite and what that product is and does. For example, warfarin was the product, blood thinner that turned the fat blue. Texas Tech did a study and they found that fat manifested turned blue within 1.5 to 3 hours, if I recall correctly. But see, the mechanism of mortality is completely different. It's a blood thinner, right? And so what happens is these animals essentially slowly bleed to death over time. And what we can point to in the research there is that it took anywhere between 6 and 16 days after a pig had consumed a lethal dose of warfarin for that animal to actually expire, right? Whereas sodium nitrite, within 30 minutes, these animals are starting to get sleepy, because what it is the mechanism of mortality there is that it reduces the ability of the blood to uptake oxygen. And so instead of bleeding to death internally, what happens is these animals are breathing normally, they're calm, they're just not getting that oxygen with each breath circulated in their blood. And so what happens is they get tired very quickly within 30 minutes. And as I pointed to earlier, 90% of the pigs expired within 300 yards. And so completely different products there. Completely different delivery mechanisms and completely different efficacy rates. Excellent question. Excellent question. It's very important to make that distinction between warfarin and sodium nitrite.
Absolutely. And Josh, we've only got a few minutes left, so I want you to go ahead, and if there were some things that you really wanted to bring up, go ahead and do that. I have another question, but if you guys have questions also, I can put up some FAQs on our website or send those out as well in response to the folks that attended today. But I want to give Josh a couple more minutes if he's got anything else.
Yeah. I just want to briefly touch on our wild pig reporting system. This is relatively new. It's less than a year old. We have an awesome website where you can report wild pigs as a member of the public. If you're a landowner, or if you just if you see pigs on the road, or if you're a wildlife professional, it doesn't matter. We're using this tool in a variety of ways. Certainly encourage folks to hop onto NRI's wild pig website and report wild pig sightings. We're using this data in a lot of interesting ways. We need a lot more replication. We need a lot more reports, right? But we have over 1,200 reports documenting 24,000 pigs. We're starting to get some good ideas on juvenile to adult ratios, for example, relative distribution of wild pig sightings across Texas. Now, we're not going to get distribution of pigs until we get a lot more replication. But the interesting thing about the data already coming in is that we can see that the habitat, the 79% of Texas that's considered ideal habitat for pigs, lines up very closely already. Why did it do it again? Lines up very closely with the report data that we're already starting to get. We're documenting the most reported counties. Smith County is the most reported county at this time. 71% of our counties have already logged wild pig reports. This is actually a really cool system. We're getting really good data on damage frequency, what the pigs are doing, how they're damaging with what frequency. I'm just rushing through this here because I know I'm short on time. I'll close with this, okay? On the wild pig reporting system, people can contribute anonymously, and they can also provide pictures. And in November of 2018, we believe that we captured the first known, or documented rather, the first known attack by wild pigs on an adult horse. Now, we know that pigs will attack sheep and goats, ungulate fawns, ground nesting birds, and they'll consume their eggs, reptiles and amphibians. But everybody I've ever talked to, no one has ever heard. And in this case, it was 15 wild pigs that came up on this show horse while it was laying down in the pasture asleep. No one has ever heard of pigs attacking a horse with this kind of violence, quite frankly. This horse did survive, but this indicates a pretty dramatic change in behavior by wild pigs. And so we're getting all kinds of great data and really astounding information, including this attack on an adult show horse. So I would just encourage folks, check out that reporting system. Please contribute to it. You can submit your pictures and all that kind of stuff. I was going to get into what we're doing with that reporting system. We have a new project with USDA, NRCS, and us.
Hey, Josh,
Yeah.
I think they won't cut us off for a few more minutes, so if we could stick on for another 5 minutes for those folks that can stay on the webinar. And for those of you who can't, I really appreciate you joining us today. But we'll stick with Josh here for another 5 minutes or so.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and this is actually my last slide in this presentation anyway, so we're going to be close. But anyway, so we're using this reporting tool in a variety of ways. Obviously, it's open to the public, but we're also using it in a collaboration between USDA, NRCS, and us. We have a 3 multi-county project area project along the Canadian River, in Potter, Hartley, and Oldham, the Red River, and also the Leon River. And essentially what's going to be happening here is we're all going to be collaborating with landowners and project techs to conduct pre-control and post-control damage assessment. We're going to report, these folks are going to be reporting animals removed by method, including damage. sightings and that sort of thing, collecting a variety of habitat restoration data. And all of this is going to be happening using the reporting tool. And what it's going to do is it's going to essentially direct, try to effectively direct control, more effectively direct control efforts. And a large portion of this is going to be through aerial gunning, but there's also the use of smart traps. This is going to be a 3-year project. We should have some outstanding data. And the project goal here, now I did not create this goal, but somebody up there said that we're going to reduce ag damage by 70% and feral swine populations by 90% over 3 years. Now, anybody who's ever tried to get after pigs knows that that is a very lofty goal. But this is a really cool project. We're planning to do some hurt on these hogs. We're trying to reduce ag damages, and we hope to take out a lot of pigs in this interagency collaboration. Guys, that's it for me. If I can go here, that reporting tool is on that website right there. So wildpigs.nri.tamu.edu. I want to thank you guys very much for letting me rant and stuff. I'm statewide, guys. I'm here from a grant from the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. If you have pig problems, pig questions, even if your trap's not working or you just want to know something that you might be able to be doing better on your property, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call anytime. That's what I'm here for. And with that, guys, thank you very much for having me today.
Josh, thank you so much for the great insight. I had not heard all the latest and greatest for sure on the sodium nitrite. So that's really especially good info. And you guys, we are recording this webinar that I'm sure we'll be able to post the recording. We're going to hopefully we'll be able to post this so you can share that with others or go back to any questions or contact information here. Again, our website is feralhogtaskforce.com. And if you'd like to follow us tomorrow and talk about aerial control and what a great tool that can be, we'll be starting at 3 p.m. then. And then again on Friday this week, to close out what we're calling Hog Week, we will have Bubba Ortiz from Ortiz Game Management. So thank you again for joining us all today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
All right, awesome. Thanks a lot.